Welcome to the Guitar Channel. I am super happy to welcome you a new interview. I am with the one and only Jens Larsen from the Netherlands. Jens, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me. Actually, I'm from Denmark, but I live in Holland.
Ah, okay, okay. So that was
Yes.
okay. Excellent. So tell me, Jens, traditional introduction question. What was your first guitar?
My first guitar, that was like a classical guitar that I got because I took lessons. I actually wanted to learn to play other kinds of music, but the only lessons I can get, I'm from a small village, was like classical.
Okay.
So my teacher told me to get this. Well, I don't remember what kind it was actually. It was like some cheap classical guitar.
And what is your what were your trainings, sorry, and influences between that very first guitar and what you are doing now?
Well, I continued with the classic. Actually, the classical guitar was really nice to do. I liked that a lot. It was a little bit up and down with how much I practiced, obviously. But so I did that, and then when I was in high school, I was in the high school band, and I could borrow an electric guitar there.
Okay.
And then later, I did enough work in gardens to actually buy an electric guitar. And then I was studying. I have a degree in mathematics, so I studied there, and then I was playing in bands, playing just rock music. I was really into Hendrix and Stevie Wonder, and also actually Pearl Jam because their lead guitar player is really coming out of that as well.
Okay.
And at some point in university, I discovered that I really liked jazz. I heard some Charlie Parker, and I really wanted to learn that. So I decided to just take a bachelor and then go to some different schools in Denmark to see if I could actually play guitar for a living. And that finally took me to, I moved around a bit and played a lot in the street in Copenhagen. Actually, I played for 2 years every day almost. And then I moved to Holland because I got accepted at the conservatory in The Hague, the Royal Conservatory.
Okay. So that's where you
Uh,
teach at the moment?
Also, yeah.
Okay.
So I teach there at the School for Young Talent. So I have a few very talented, scarily young students
Nice.
who play really.
And what was is there a guitar lick or I don't know a guitar song that really got you inspired to say, okay, this is it. I want to do it. I want to become a guitar player. And obviously, can you play it?
That I wanted to become a guitar player.
Yeah.
Uh,
What was your smoke on the water? You know, that's usually the question I ask.
yeah, that's a good. I think actually the one like there is, and I don't remember the song, but I remember because it's one of those kind. There are like these few defining moments where you have like a moments with music where you really get inspired.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, one that one that really inspired a lot of people from my generation is when the first time they heard "Killing in the Name of" by Rage Against the Machine.
Okay.
So but that's not really something that inspired me to play guitar. I think actually the one where I really thought, okay, I want to check out this jazz thing was because I was checking out a lot of blues. There is Parker blues. I think it's called Casey blues. I don't remember how it goes, but it's a blues in F, and the solo starts with or something along those lines. I don't remember, but it was like one of the first thing I heard. And I was like, okay, so this guy plays a lot of stuff that I really don't understand, and then something that I really understand, and he really knows how to do that. I need to figure this out, and
Okay.
that was so defining moment from okay, I no more mathematics. Let's learn jazz.
Okay. So for you, there is no turning back. You define yourself as a jazz guitar player now?
Yeah, I think so. But it's also, but then again, like the whole thing is what is jazz? You know, I mean, there are so many. Even with the music that I make, I think I can find a lot of people who will tell me that that's not jazz
Yeah, yeah,
because it's incorporating riffs and it's blending from all the stuff that I grew up with, and
and there is, we can hear distortion and overdrive in your sound. Oh my God, this is a blasphemy in a jazz record, right?
yeah, but I mean, we've been doing that since Schofield,
Yeah.
so it's been around 40 years already. And well, I don't know. I mean, it is true, but this is always going to be the question: like, when is it jazz and when isn't it? And I actually have ideas of it, but I also don't have a good definition. So sometimes I'm going like, well, I don't like this, and then I think it isn't jazz, but maybe it's just that I don't like it. You know, it's not about, I can't really say that it's not jazz. Maybe.
So what would
Yeah,
be your
it's so,
definition of jazz then?
well, I mean, it has to have some amount of improvisation for to be interesting. and it has to have some sort of, or it has to have some sort of groove, some sort of swing. This is important as well, I think. And interaction is, for me personally, and that's also to varying degrees important in the different periods in jazz. But for me, that's like what I really like. Like I know you interviewed Gilad Hexelman,
Yeah.
and for him, how he plays with Ari Honig is for me is fantastic. You know,
Okay.
or Herbie Hancock with Tony Williams. Those kind of things. That's where it's all at for me. Where you, and that's also how I play. Really, like I like to base my solos a lot around what is happening in the rhythm section behind me, and it has to be some sort of conversation. But that's the most fun part, at least.
I discovered you through your YouTube channel. So, can you tell us how you organize your work? I mean, you are a guitar teacher, a music teacher, and you also produce YouTube videos. So, can you describe how you work and what's your business approach to all that?
Well, I mean, yeah. So I teach at the conservatory. I teach also at a music school, yeah, I have a day there as well. And then yeah, I've been doing these YouTube jazz guitar lessons for the last 2 years. And it was that was a little bit by coincidence that I sort of stumbled into it. I came across. I found out that what people went to my website for were the transcriptions that I left there. And then I started making some lessons, and they were without video, but I just made some lessons because I thought, well, maybe they're interested in that too, and they were interested. And then I could post the lessons on this website called Ultimate Guitar.
Okay.
And there I kind of started to meet people who were also posting lessons there, but they were all making YouTube lessons. And especially one guy that I owe a lot for that was Chris Super. I don't know if you know him, who makes these tutorials for rock and metal solos. And he was really like, well, you need to start making lessons on YouTube. That's much better for you also, and you can do more with it. So I had contact with him, and he convinced me to start doing that. And that's how I kind of got into that. And that's going quite well. I think next month, hopefully I'll reach, or well, actually within this month, I'll reach 20,000 subscribers.
Nice,
So
which is nice, yeah.
it's a good. But of course, so that's the story of that, and that's just ongoing. Then I'm also a guitar player, obviously, and I play a lot of different things. I have my own band, which we just talked about. It's called Trapping.
Yeah.
We're working on starting to work on the fourth album now. We've done 3 albums, and gaining some ground also. We tour quite frequently, or at least like a few times a year. And especially we have a good foothold in my home country. So in Denmark, we get a fair amount of airplay, and we've been to Canada, and now we're going to Germany in October also.
Nice.
So we get to go out and play, do some concerts with that. So I'm working on that. And then, I mean, I'm in a project where we do school concerts also, which is something I do quite a lot. So, so we go to a school, and then we have a jazz concert where we have written material that some of the kids can actually participate and come up and play some rhythms with us and stuff like that, which is something I do 2 or 3 times a week. And then we travel the whole country, which in Holland is not so big, but
Nice.
still.
And so going back to your YouTube channel, is that a way for you to put your name out and to say, okay, I am available to teach or that? And is that also a way for you to get money out of the advertisement, or is that all of the above?
It's a little bit all of the above. I mean, I'm already teaching 2 places, so I'm not necessarily looking too much to teach like Skype lessons like we're doing this interview.
Okay.
But I do it sometimes because it's fun, you know. I think the YouTube lessons, the reason why I can do it for every week for 2 years is because I enjoy it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, when I put up a video, I get comments and I have contact with the people watching the video, and they tell me what they like and what they don't like, and they have questions and stuff like that. And that's just fun to do. And it's also just fun to make videos about something that you really care about. I enjoy doing all these jazz videos because it's the stuff I'm busy with myself, you know. So
Yeah, and you push a lot of content and targeted content, not too long video, but high quality with, okay, I'm going to talk about this and that and this aspect. And then you also publish the transcription It's a lot of content you put out for free, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, but I have, besides getting the Google Ads income, which is it's not a lot of money,
Yeah.
obviously, but I also sell lessons in my web store, which is a lot more money. It's not like I get rich by it, but
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing where like you do this, and I think for you it has to be for a big part the same. You know, I mean you need to eat and you need to pay your rent, but
Yeah,
at the
sure.
same time you do stuff because you like it. You know, you love doing this, and then that's why you do it. And music in general is very much like this.
Yeah.
So we just have to be not only creative when we play music, we also have to be very creative when we pay the rent.
Yeah.
And
And I think more and more nowadays, that's the way modern musicians are working. I mean, they get paid hopefully once in a while for a gig or for a record they release, or but they often give lessons or they find creative ways to have their name out and get heard and get hired. I don't know, for a session. Do you do, for example, session work, or are you focused on your teaching and your band?
no, I do. I've done session work as well, but I'm not in a. I don't think I'm in really a circuit where I do a lot of session work. But I mean, I'll do a few recordings a year. I guess I've been doing 3 this year, where like one is just some big band film music and advertising and stuff like that. I will do that once in a while. I've done a few things also now that I have a presence on the internet more, that I get asked to record something for a PR thing, or that I'll make. Like I made a series of videos for a PR campaign for a publishing company in England, stuff like this. So I do that too. But I mean, yeah, I also get the impression that there's not a huge amount of work in sessions, because everything can be done with computers right now.
Yeah.
But there is some. I mean, I do a bit, but it's also it's too little to really count on it for me.
Talking about how you teach, and what is the usual the most common mistakes or problem you see you have to solve with your student? Is that, I don't know, rhythm? Is that that the fact that they don't read the music, or what's your take on that?
Probably the thing that everybody needs to solve, almost no matter how good they are and how much they'll pick up themselves, is that they have to work on their rhythm and the thing. Well, especially if I teach jazz, obviously, then there is this thing that there is the concept of swing, and people who can't play jazz will play swing like, where it should be more like, and it just sounds so much better. But it's hard to describe, because like the first thing you can write down, you can actually say, well, that's a triplet, and you go 1 and 3rd triplet, and everybody can understand that. But it's in between.
Yeah.
And that gets tricky. You need to hear it, and then once you can hear it, you need to kind of feel it, and then you need to put it into your playing, and that's like a long process, which for most people is difficult. It's one of, like, there's a lot of stuff you can just explain, and then they can work on it. And like if they have to learn to play changes, you can tell them, okay, but you're playing 2 bars of C, and when you get to the F minor, you hit the A flat, so you go like, and then you can really, okay, everybody can hear that, you know. So if you pick the right piece, if you so if you pick the right piece and you tell them to hit the right notes, you can tell them to practice in a way where they can hear what's going on, and it will get into their system. And the other thing is, it's more tricky, because it's like they can't always, they have to record themselves to really hear if it's good and stuff like that. So that's the most difficult thing to teach, I think. But also you have to, everybody needs to learn it.
Yeah, sure. I have this impression that for me, for example, my background is more blues oriented or rock oriented, and I am getting more into jazz at the moment. And it's not that I want to become a jazz guitar player, because I won't be, that's for sure. But I have the impression that working on jazz will improve my vocabulary and will help me get better at blues and at rock. So what do you say to that?
Well, it can, but I mean, it's also a certain type of vocabulary, because the jazz vocabulary is very much sort of fixated on hitting chords a lot of the time. Huh? So you have, like I said, like okay, you really need to hit that A flat when you're on the F minor, and I mean that can be good if you like that kind of sound in your blues playing. Then it's useful to check it out, obviously. But maybe you will find that you don't really want that because it's not always the defining character of how people play blues. You know, I mean, it's and it can be kind of nice. Coming out of a very blues-inspired thing myself, there are certain things I just like about that, in that it's different from jazz. You know, I mean, you have the blues players who really sit a lot in the changes, like Robin Ford and Larry Carlton. Is sort of a certain era where I always was more gravitating towards Muddy Waters and B.B. King and people like that, you know, and they don't do that as much. So in that way, I almost prefer my blues a little bit more pure, maybe. But at the same time, working like this is, of course, just opening up a box of material that you can use, incorporate. So in that way, of course, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how you put it to use is then going to be sort of how much it's going to be something you can use for something that depends on what you want, and also, but obviously, like, try and be aware of that, because you might run into that problem. That's like, okay, I can really play an alto dominant, but I actually happen to hate alto dominance in blues.
Yeah, the problem I think with blues related or rock influenced musician is that at least at our level, which is amateur playing, is that we get stuck very often, you know, in the minor or major pentatonic, and we don't know how to get out of this box. And I see studying jazz as a way to, again, and that's a term I always use, to add new words to your vocabulary, even if you are not going to play it in a jazz context. That's what I mean.
Yeah. No, but I think also that's the way to approach it. And then just, I would say, like, for efficiency, I would always be very conscious of if you listen to a line and go like, okay, so he does this with some line, and then can I really hear myself doing this in a progression? You know, I mean, is this gonna make sense, or is it gonna be too bebop or too something? You know, I mean, it's like everybody knows, like so that's not gonna fit in a blues. No, it just isn't. It's just always gonna sound out of place.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, a lot of the stuff that they play in the solo there will be just fine. You can easily apply it and check it out and see what you come up with. But actually, you can do that with any kind of music.
Sure.
So,
for
instance, country would be a good place to go if you like that sound. Huh?
Yeah, true. What is the usual piece of advice you give to guitar players to improve their playing, and especially to shorten the length between their brain or their heart and their finger? Because I think that very often as guitar player we work on the mechanics, you know, yes, I want to play fast, blah, blah, blah. And we learn to play fast, but we forget about what's going on here or what's going on in our heart, and we keep repeating some licks without any meaning. So it's a gibberish at the end of the day. So what would be your advice to avoid that?
Well, there are a few things you can think of like that. Like I would, I mean, you need to listen to yourself. Huh? So the first thing you need to do is actually be aware of the problem, record yourself, and listen to it, and then see if you can figure out, like, okay, is there something I can actually do something about this? And especially if you have the tendency to play stuff that's just in your fingers, then you probably need to sort of force yourself not to do that, which just means like practice playing a phrase and stopping. And then the next step from that is like play the phrase, and then when you stop, and maybe you do that rubato, but then you stop and try and listen for yourself. Like, okay, what do I hear next? You know, what should come next? So I think that's probably sort of the short version. I spend a lot of time trying to teach people in my lessons. I can't do that on YouTube because it doesn't work with the format that well. To teach people to compose. If you're an improviser and you want to improvise well, then one of the best ways to sort of practice, if you practice improvisation slowly, then in fact you're composing. And if you compose and you write stuff down, and you need to analyze, if you have problems figuring out what's wrong, if you start writing the stuff down, so you need to write simple stuff that you can easily write down, because you don't want to spend years transcribing yourself. That's really boring. And but if you do that, you can actually, you have something where you can go, okay, that from here it sounds wrong. This I need to change, you know. And then you can try and changing it, and you can take that process and build that. Try to incorporate that into a practice session. That's a lot of how I work, and I experiment also. I don't really write things down anymore, but it is a lot of how I've worked and how I try to develop, like playing something and really listening to, do I really like it, and also just playing and then trying to see from, okay, now I play this, what's gonna come next.
And what's your take about reading music? Do we have at one point in time to learn to read music, or are we going to be able to make it, or to make improvement to our playing, at least with the knowledge of the chords, the intervals, and so on, without going through a chart?
I think even on, as what I see on conservatory level students already, they don't read that well. They can sort of make their way through it, and actually that goes for a lot. I started with classical, so I'm very used to reading, and I've done a lot of big band, which is also one of the reasons why I get the session gigs, because you do need to read. You know, as soon as you start having to communicate with other musicians, you need to write things down in a jazz setting anyway. You know, so for me, it's essential that you can. And as soon as you start playing with other people, you kind of need to, just to understand, just to have a way of communicating on paper, but also just like, okay, so you're rushing on B3, then you need to know what B3 is and stuff. So there are all sorts of things with that. So for that, I think it is useful. Also, it's often made into something really difficult. And of course, like most things, it takes time to learn. Yeah. But it's not really difficult. Everybody says it's difficult on guitar, and I'm not sure it is actually. You know, if you just do it, but it has to have a point. You know, you have to have a reason to do it, and then you have to work on it for some time. But it's like scales. You know, you work on scales daily, and most of us who are just even a little bit serious about it will do that for years. And the same goes for something like reading, that you need to try and read something, and then realize that when you do that, you get all this music that's available to you that you can read. You know, you get all these violin, classical violin music that you can use for getting better technique, and you know, there's a lot of stuff that you gain from it, and it is an easier way to understand music theory also. So for that, it is necessary to some degree, yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about gear for a moment. We often see you in your videos with that Ibanez, and I also see that you have an Axe FX gear, so which is usually used by heavy metal players. So that's pretty unusual, right?
Yeah, I guess it is. Well, it's less. I mean, I think in terms of, if you just look at the modeling thing and jazz, which used to be not done whatsoever. I think Lionel Lueke and Kurt Rosenwinkel are both using, like one is using a Kemper and the other one is using an Axe FX. So it's becoming more common, and it's just practical, you know. For me, it was like when I was done with the conservatory and I started to develop my own style more and more, I sort of started collecting pedals and stuff because I needed things, but I had two problems with that, and that also says something about the school of a jazz guitar player. You don't learn anything about effects whatsoever. It's like you have a guitar, you have a cable, goes into an amp,
and that's it. Yeah.
That's it. And but that's not how it is anymore. I mean, everybody has a pedal board. Luckily, you know, let's get some different sounds in there, please. But so I started experimenting with it, and then it was like, okay, it's easier. Instead of just trying a million pedals and not knowing what I want to do, I think the first thing I did was I got like an old Line 6 pod. And then I tried, like, I kind of liked some of the amp sounds a bit, but when I was playing live, I was like, oh, this is not nearly good enough. So I only used it for the effects, and it did that quite okay. And then I needed to upgrade that at some point, and then the next logical step was like, okay, I like working with modelers, and it's practical. It's easy to record. When I need to make a song at home, I always have to, like, that's the shortcoming of writing down music is I cannot write down a mood. So when I write something, I'll write down the melody and the chords, and I'll play it as a sort of just so I have a reference. Because if I'm gonna pick it up again in 2 months, I wouldn't know. So I always record myself like that. And I knew that I was doing this, so I thought it was worthwhile to invest in something as relatively expensive as an XFX. And for me, it was like I don't mind messing with it enough till I have it at a working, so that I can work with it. And the first one was like that. So I have my old Ultra here. It was a bit like you needed to get used to it and stuff like that. But like now I upgraded to this X8, and actually I've twice performed like at Fractal events with an X8 that I dialed in 5 minutes, 10 minutes without for myself, you know. So I find for me it's becoming intuitive. I know them, and I have I can mess with it. I can just exactly the right delay and just exactly the right reverb, because you can go deep in that. And sometimes it's nice to do that. I have an idea now about what I want, so I can do that, and then I can just set it and forget it, you know.
So when you play live, you have your system which is plugged into the PA, and you have something to hear you, or yeah.
I have like a QSC K10 monitor.
Okay.
It's right behind me. So also what you hear in all my videos is this one through the K10. And I mean, it's like a 10-inch speaker. And my whole setup is at this moment is probably less than 20 kilos in terms of amp connection, huh? Which is for me. I mean, I like all the school concerts and stuff like that. And I travel a lot. I take my gear out 4 or 5 times a week, and it has to work well. That was also a thing, because I was already starting to do these school concerts. It has to sound great at a very, very low volume.
Okay, yeah.
Feel nice at that, and that's half with a tube amp. I was sort of on the fence with that. Should I get a small tube amp, or should I get something? And then I went for the XFX, and then I really like it. So I'm staying with it for sure.
And so let's talk about guitar. I guess the main characteristic of your guitar is that they have to be sunburst, right?
Yeah, that's exactly. The weird thing about that is that that never occurred to me. I never thought about it until somebody commented on the video. And then I was like, oh, I was sitting in the car with some colleagues. And I was like, I had the weirdest comment. All my guitars are sunburst. And then I was like, and I didn't know. And they were like, yeah, of course, you always buy a sunburst. Oh, yeah. Okay, maybe I do. So yeah. So I have to say it's a complete coincidence, actually. I tried. Let's see. So I mean, for my guitars, like this is my main guitar, my Ibanez. This is a 70s Ibanez. It's called an AS2630, and this is like the version they made before they made like the Schofield.
All right.
Famous.
Okay.
It's a little bit like the neck is a little bit thicker, I think, and it's different set of pickups. But for the rest, it's just a very well built semi-hollow, and it's not so expensive. I guess that's sort of the thing with it.
All right. One last question, Jens. What are your next projects for this year and after that?
My next project, well, I have sort of in different areas several projects. So I just started a trio because my band does one sort of music, which I want to keep on doing, but I want to do other stuff too. That's maybe a little bit more in the jazz corner of the term sound-wise, and also a little bit more about even more room for interaction and just playing around and stuff. So we did one concert until now, and I have probably 7 or 8 songs for that band, and I need to write some more songs, and then we'll see where we take it from there. And then there's like the next coming Trapping album, which we are sort of starting to work on. That's also for a huge part already written. So that's the thing. Then the YouTube channel is just keeping on going. It's growing. I've been experimenting with making these Q&A videos, which is fun to do. again, the whole thing with communicating with the people watching is fun. You know? You probably know this already. And so maybe that's gonna, if I have time, that's also a little bit like, okay, I can't make that many videos and still do all the other stuff. So, but yeah, in general, like I have a lot of stuff going on that's really fun. So it's hard. I just sleep less.
Okay. Yeah, that's always a solution. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jens, it was great to be able to talk to you. Thanks a lot for your time, and keep up the great work of all you do with the music and the videos and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Get your backstage pass on the Guitar channel. This is only a small fraction of the content available. The second component of the pass is the access to lessons and masterclasses. The third component is access to deals with partners. And the last component is the access to the private community to get high-quality discussions with guitar aficionados like you. The Backstage Pass is only $8 per month, or $43 for 6 months, or $76 for a year.